So recently I decided to watch most of Helluva Boss. I didn't watch every single episode, and I'm probably not going to watch every episode, but I watched most of the show, and that's all that matters. And I'll be damned, maybe Vivzy Pop isn't as talentless as I initially made her out to be. I would like to start this off by saying that Helluva Boss is far from a good show. By no means am I saying that this is a good show, but to my surprise, this is nowhere near as bad as Has-Been Hotel was. Well, this aged like milk, didn't it, folks? Didn't it? Allow me to provide you with a bit of backstory as to how this video came to be. At the beginning of last year, a little cartoon would come out called Has-Been Hotel, and everyone would be making a big deal about it. A lot of people loved it, but there were also a lot of people that hated it, and the people that hated it really hated it, and that made me curious as to how bad this show could have been. So one day, I start watching every episode of the show at the time, and what are the odds I end up hating the show? I think the show is garbage. I think it's one of the worst cartoons I've ever seen, that sort of thing. When it came to something like this, I went into it hoping I would either like the show or not like it, but understand why people like it. And instead, I finished watching the show, not understanding at all what people saw in this, not understanding how anyone could find the show good or funny. I made a video reviewing season 1, and throughout that video, I acknowledged another cartoon from the same creator as Has-Been Hotel, Vivian Medrano. This other cartoon called Helluva Boss. My original plan was to review both Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss in the same video. However, because I hated Has-Been Hotel that much, I decided, no, we're gonna save Helluva Boss for a later time. We're gonna have that be its own other video. Fast forward to the summer of 2024, and I finally build up the courage to start watching Helluva Boss. And at the time, I didn't hate the show as much as Has-Been Hotel. I acknowledged, as you saw in that beginning clip, I acknowledged the show wasn't very good. I didn't like the show. I didn't love it, but it was also not as bad as Has-Been Hotel. A lot of the problems that I had with Has-Been Hotel, they were still there in Helluva Boss. However, they weren't there to the same extent. And as a result of that, I found Helluva Boss to be a considerably better show than Has-Been Hotel. However, here is a very important key detail to keep in mind when I go over this first video that I made on Helluva Boss. When I reviewed Helluva Boss initially, I only mainly watched the first season, and that's it. As of making this video, Helluva Boss has 2 seasons, and I think maybe there were like 4 or 5 episodes of season 2 that were out when I made my video on Helluva Boss, and I ended up not watching any of those episodes. I only primarily focused on the season 1 episodes, and maybe I watched like half of the first episode of season 2, but then I decided, yep, that's enough. I've watched enough of the show. I don't need to watch every single episode of the show in order to review it. Little did I know that Helluva Boss would be one of those shows where I needed to watch every episode in order to truly review it. Again, season 2 wasn't finished when I made my video on the show initially, but if I had known how different season 2 would be from season 1, I wouldn't have been as positive towards the show as I was in that video. And by positive, I mean mostly mixed, meh, average, which for Vivzy Pop standards, that's pretty damn positive. But alas, when I made my initial video on Helluva Boss, I only focused on season 1, and I completely ignored the at the time still running season 2. And after I made this video, I would just move on from Vivzy Pop and her cartoons. I thought I said everything that I ever wanted to say about Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss. There was quite literally no reason for me to go over either of these shows a second time. For the case of Helluva Boss though, something ended up happening that made me reconsider doing that. It's early 2025. It's around like, I don't know, May or so, April, I'm not sure. It's extremely late at night. It's about like 2, 3 in the morning. I can't sleep. I'm scrolling through YouTube on my phone, bored out of my mind, trying to find something to watch. And that's when I get recommended a video titled, Helluva Boss has the worst writing I've ever seen, or something along those lines. A link to this video will be in the description below because, you know, why not? The video was like an hour and 40 minutes long. It was a very long video, and I was in a bit of a hater mood that night, so I decided, you know what? Fine, I'll watch this video. I'll watch this guy talk about why Helluva Boss is a bad show, as if I already didn't do that myself. I click on the video, and this video goes through every single episode of Helluva Boss up to that point, from the 2019 pilot all the way up to Sinsmas. The video covered episodes that I didn't bother to watch when I reviewed Helluva Boss initially, episodes that weren't even released when I made my video on the show. And the more I kept watching the video, the more I realized, holy shit, I might have been too nice to this show initially. I might have been too nice. I might have been too kind. I was generous towards this show. There was always that small gut feeling inside of me that Helluva Boss was indeed as bad as Has Been Hotel, but I just couldn't prove it. And now, thanks to this video opening up my eyes as to what season 2 of Helluva Boss is like, I decided, you know what, at some point, I will watch and review season 2 myself to see how bad it is. And it's not just this video either. I would frequently get videos recommended to me talking about the show and how it fell off in quality with season 2. You have people that think the show was never good to begin with, however they acknowledge the show was less bad in season 1 when compared to in season 2. You have people criticizing the many problems with the show's writing and the themes that it has and that sort of thing. And it just kept making me more and more curious. How bad is Helluva Boss season 2 when compared to season 1? That was the question that I wanted answered. And so, because it's Halloween, because Helluva Boss focuses on hell and demons and whatever, I figured this would be perfect for Halloween. And so I spent an entire 2 days binge watching all 12 episodes of season 2. I didn't bother to rewatch any of the season 1 episodes as they were still fresh in my memory. And given one of the biggest reasons why season 2 of Helluva Boss is criticized, I don't think I need to rewatch season 1. So the story of Helluva Boss follows 3 demons, Blitzo, Millie, and Moxie, and a hot wolf girl named Luna. The only good thing about the show, I'll admit it. Helluva Boss is garbage, but Luna is a top tier furry waifu, alright? I gotta be real. I hate the fact that this peak character has to come from something so terrible, but whatever, there's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. So you have these 3 demons and a hot wolf girl, and they run an assassination business. They are hitmen. Someone from hell could go up to these 4 and hire them to assassinate someone in the human world as a form of revenge. If a woman gets murdered in the human world and she gets sent to hell, she can go down to these 4 and hire them to assassinate the person who murdered her as revenge. I will not deny, this is a great premise. This is a very fun, unique premise that I think has a lot of potential. The first 2 episodes of the show, the 2019 pilot and Murder Family, although they're not very funny, they do give me an idea of what this show could be like. They show me the potential that this storyline could have and how it could be a really fun story. And so you would think that this would be a fun action comedy about 4 demon hitmen, well, 3 demon hitmen and a hot wolf girl who doesn't actually partake in the assassinations, and instead she just mostly works back at the office. You have this story, and I think it has a lot of potential to work. I think this is a great storyline that has a lot of potential to be fun. Here's the problem. They do nothing. I repeat, fucking nothing with this premise. This amazing, great, potentially fun premise is completely wasted. It's treated like a secondary thing for this show. In order to assassinate people in the human world, Blitzo steals a magical book, a grimoire, I think is what they call it. I don't know. I'm calling it a book. I don't care. He steals this book that allows him to enter the human world alongside Moxie and Millie. However, he steals this book from a demon prince named Stolas, and he gets caught. And so, in order to ensure that he can keep the book as long as possible, Blitzo more or less becomes a sex slave for Stolas. And then as it turns out, Stolas has a wife named Stella and a daughter named Octavia. And it doesn't take long before they both become aware of this whole thing. The main focus of the show is on the relationship between Blitzo and Stolas, and the demon assassin stuff is a secondary thing, when it should be the other way around. I don't know how you can it up this badly. Why would you come up with this great, creative, fun premise and then have it be like a secondary thing in favor of prioritizing generic romance bullshit? It doesn't make any goddamn sense to me at all. Of the 12 season 2 episodes, only 2 episodes, and maybe a 3rd episode, I don't know, only 3 of them focus on the demon assassin's plotline. Unhappy Campers, Ghost Screwers, and Sinsmiss. That's it. Those are the only 3 episodes that focus on the demon assassin's plotline. I don't even know if Sinsmiss counts. For Sinsmiss, it's barely in the episode. It's barely in the story. And so I'm not even sure if it really counts, to be honest. Now, I remember reading something that originally Stolas was intended to be like a villain for the show, maybe the main villain of the show, and there is a bit of this villainous feel to him in the early episodes, and I think this whole relationship thing could be redeemed. No, that's not a Has-Been Hotel reference, I'm sorry. I think this could be redeemed if they had it be like Stolas as a villain. I've seen a lot of people say that like, oh, Stolas abuses Blitzo, they're in an abusive relationship, whatever, and it's like, that could be interesting. That could be an interesting idea, an interesting concept. And then they completely abandon it by turning Stolas into a good guy, more or less. Portraying the relationship between him and Blitzo as being a good thing, which makes it nowhere near as interesting as it could possibly be. Now, I've seen a lot of different conflicting sources as to why they decided to change Stolas from being a villain. Apparently, the fans of the show liked the idea of him and Blitzo being in a relationship for some reason, and so they decided to change it because of fan service. I think maybe it was like Vivian Medrano herself, or someone that was involved with the creation of the show. Like, I think one of the voice actors, I'm not sure, they thought it was a good pairing, and so they decided, you know what, let's show this off as a good thing, thereby making the story even less interesting than it should be, even less interesting than it already is. Reminder, this is supposed to be a show about demon hitmen. You have a great premise, and you decide to do nothing with it. Now, something that I initially praised the Helluva boss for was the fact that it seemingly didn't retain the same flaws that Has-Been Hotel had, and if there were any flaws that were shared between the two, they were there to a far lesser extent for Helluva boss when compared to Has-Been Hotel. One of the biggest problems that I had with Has-Been Hotel was the style of humor that it had. I remember before watching Has-Been Hotel, I would see a lot of people make memes that are like, if this random thing was made by Vivzy Pop, if SpongeBob or whatever was made by Vivzy Pop, and it would just be like non-stop swearing galore. F-bombs and sex jokes galore. And I initially thought that those memes were just hyperbole. I thought it was just, they're memes, they're jokes, they're not to be taken seriously. I thought they were overreactions, hyperbole. And then I actually watch Has Been Hotel, and I am astonished to find out the humor in this show is exactly like that. It's just, haha, it's funny, the characters say the F word a million times. It's funny, the characters make a million sex jokes, and that's it. It is the most painfully unfunny thing that I've ever seen. And you want to know what makes it even worse? They try to have serious moments in this show. Has Been Hotel is a comedy, or at least it tries to be one, but there's also moments where it tries to be super serious and dramatic. And the problem is, these super serious, dramatic moments are impossible to take seriously because of how awful the comedy is. I don't care about the serious moments in question, like the themes regarding them. I don't care like what themes are they tackling. I don't care about the execution of the serious dramatic moments themselves. That doesn't matter when the humor is this unfunny. The controversial abusive relationship between Angel Dust and Valentino, I am unable to care about it or take it seriously, regardless of how it's executed, because I get reminded this is the same show that thinks saying the F word and the B word a trillion times is funny, and that prevents me from ever taking this seriously. That prevents me from looking at this and caring about it. And I know that's an awful thing for me to say out of context, but I'm sorry, that's how I feel. And then we move on to Helluva Boss, and initially with season 1, I thought Helluva Boss was better in this aspect. Yeah, the show wasn't very funny. I didn't really laugh all that much when I watched Helluva Boss season 1, but at least it felt like they were mildly trying with the humor. Ever so slightly, they were trying. And so as a result of that, the few serious moments that were within season 1, I was able to take them a tiny bit seriously. I was able to mildly care about them. And then we move on to season 2, and holy shit, it is a massive downgrade from season 1. All of a sudden, the swearing and the sex jokes become a lot more common. Every other second, there's a character saying the F word, there's a character saying the B word, that sort of thing. Every other second, there is some kind of sex joke included, and it gets very old very quickly. There's only so many times you can have the joke be haha pee pee, haha horny. There's only so many times you can do that before eventually it gets old, it gets boring, and it gets stale. The constant sex jokes are moderately annoying and pretty unfunny in the first episode of season 2, and then by the time I'm halfway into season 2, by the time I'm like 6 episodes in, I'm just thinking, oh my god, we get it. The characters are horny. Can we have other jokes, please, for the love of God? Now, because season 2 almost completely abandons the demon hitman storyline, instead focusing on the relationship between Blitzo and Stolas, that means that there are a lot more dramatic, serious moments in the show as well. There are moments where most of the time it feels like the show doesn't want to be a comedy anymore. And so as a result of that, there are a lot more serious moments. There are a lot more dramatic moments in season 2 when compared to in season 1. The problem is, once again, it is impossible to take any of these moments seriously. It is impossible for me to care about any of these serious moments, because not only do I get reminded that this is the same show that thinks saying the F word a billion times is funny, but I also get reminded that like a minute or two from this serious moment, the show is going to go back into wacky, silly, haha mode. The show's going to go back into thinking, oh, it's funny because the characters make a lot of pee-pee jokes. It's funny because they say the B word. It's funny, guys. It's funny. And it just completely undermines and devalues whatever serious moments there are in the show. One of the early episodes of season 2 focuses heavily on Moxie's family, with his father being like this Godfather-esque mob boss. There's a scene in the episode where we get all of these flashbacks to his like relationship with his father when he was a kid, and it's revealed that like he's a pretty bad father to Moxie, and it's supposed to be a serious moment. I should take this seriously, and yet I don't. Not only do I not take it seriously, but I also don't care about it at all. Because 2 to 3 minutes before this super serious dramatic moment, the characters were constantly yelling out F-bombs and sex jokes just for the sake of cheap laughs. And then spliced in between these super serious dramatic moments, you have these little jokes included that make it even harder to take the serious moments seriously. So I guess there was this whole thing with Moxie where it's like, I guess he at one point was in love with this guy. I don't remember his name. I think his name was like Chad or something like that. I don't know and I don't care. And this guy is gay for Moxie. Moxie's bisexual. And his dad wants to have an arranged marriage between Chad and Moxie, which Moxie is against as he's happily married to his wife Millie. Also, at the very beginning of this episode, it's revealed that Millie was in a relationship with Chad as well. And she's like extremely angry just thinking about him, and then it's never acknowledged again for the rest of the episode. The episode focuses entirely on Moxie's relationship with Chad, and then it never once acknowledges Millie's relationship with Chad. What the hell happened between the two of these characters that caused Millie to be so angry at the beginning of the episode? It's never acknowledged. It's never explained. Top quality writing right here, man. Top quality writing. Anyways, getting back on topic. Moxie's dad mocks his son. Jesus, that's a tongue twister right there. For being bisexual. For being into both men and women. And so the two of them are alone. And there's like a quick scene where Moxie's dad pushes a button. And then you have all of these dildos, vibrators, whatever, pulsating out of the walls. The entire room is covered wall to wall, ceiling to floor with dildos, which is obviously Moxie's dad trying to make fun of him for being LGBT. And it's at this point where we're still in wacky, silly, funny mode, and then almost immediately, the show takes a sharp turn left and it becomes a super serious dramatic mode, where Moxie's dad ends up slapping Moxie, and then we get all of the flashbacks showing, Moxie's dad is a terrible father, and it's very clearly supposed to be something that I should take seriously. I should be taking all of this seriously, and yet I'm unable to, because, again, this is the same show that thinks saying the F word a billion times is funny. And then the flashback ends, Moxie leaves the room, and then we have, like, an establishing shot of the room that Moxie's dad is in, and you have all of these dildos all over the wall, very clearly intended to be a joke, in the middle of what is supposed to be a serious moment. It ruins any tension. It ruins any chances of the viewer watching this and taking it seriously. And so you would think, like, after this, the show would go back into happy, silly, funny mode. But no, we're still in super serious, dramatic mode. Moxie goes up into the room that he's assigned to stay in. He opens it up. He sees that the room is covered with pictures of Chad. And he's like, oh, come the on, or something like that. For sake, I'm not sure. He says something along those lines. And there you go. You have another brief joke included in this serious moment, completely ruining the tension. And then just like that, we are immediately back into super serious dramatic mode. It doesn't work. It's awful. The tonal shift doesn't work at all. Every single one of the 12 episodes suffers from this awful tonal shift. Not once does it ever feel natural, the transition going from the comedy to the drama. It always feels abrupt and out of nowhere. To give you another idea of how bad the tonal shift is, let's go over the aforementioned Ghost Screwers episode, which, in hindsight, yeah, I could have come up with a better way to censor the episode's name, but I prefer to be consistent, so I apologize. As I mentioned before, this is one of the very few episodes of Season 2 to focus on the demon hitman plot that the show is supposed to have. You have Blitzo and Millie teaming up together to investigate this haunted hotel in order to take down the ghost haunting it, with Millie believing that this is what Blitzo needs after the breakup he had with Stolas a few episodes prior. Midway into the episode, Blitzo and Millie split up, and then Blitzo has I don't know what the hell this is, a realistic depiction of a panic attack. I don't know, animation is cinema. He hallucinates his mom, who, I guess she's dead, I don't know. Next thing you know, Millie comes across Blitzo and tries to confront him, only for Blitzo to start bawling about how he's a horrible person and how he makes the lives of everyone around him worse by just simply being there. And this is stuff that I'm supposed to take seriously. I should take this stuff seriously. I should care about this stuff, and instead, I don't. Because just 2 minutes before this same character in this same episode was constantly making jokes about how he was gonna have sex with the ghost haunting this hotel. With that in mind, I found it near damn impossible to take any of this seriously. Combine that with the fact that, for all I knew, 2 minutes after this super sad, serious scene, the show would go back to being, haha, Blitzo wants to have sex with the ghost haunting the hotel. And it's like, does the show want me to take this seriously or not? Does the show want me to care about this stuff or not? This is genuinely some of the worst tonal shifts I've ever seen in anything ever. This is Thor Love and Thunder on crack right here. I have to make it very clear that you can absolutely mix comedy and drama together. You can have a show be a funny, silly comedy and then also have it have dark, serious moments in it. It is entirely possible. I'm not going to act like, oh, it's a bad idea. The problem is not the fact that they're mixing comedy and drama together. The problem is the way that they mix comedy and drama together. It doesn't work. It feels way too abrupt, and it makes me think, what is this show trying to be? What does this show want to be? Does it want to be a funny, silly comedy about demon hitmen who make a lot of sex jokes? Or does it want to be a super serious drama about the relationship between a bird and a demon? It tries to be both at the same time, and it fails at being both at the same time. This show has an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be. I remember reading something that apparently one of the biggest inspirations for Has-Been Hotel and Helluva bosses, and I'm not joking when I say this, Bojack Horseman. And bizarrely enough, I never thought I would ever say this, I can kind of see where she's coming from with this. I can very slightly see where the inspiration comes from. One of the reasons why Bojack Horseman is so beloved when compared to other adult cartoons is its blend of comedy and drama. The show, for the most part, is a funny comedy. However, there are several moments in the show that are much darker and more serious and depressing. This isn't a 100% pure comedy, and it works perfectly. The blend of comedy and drama works for Bojack Horseman, and part of why it works is because Bojack Horseman has this magical thing called good writing. The jokes are actually funny. Unlike 99% of adult cartoons, Bojack over here doesn't rely extensively on swear words and sex jokes in order to be funny. There are actual jokes in this show, and they are actually funny. And so as a result of that, that allows you to take the dramatic, depressing moments a lot more seriously. When the show is a comedy, you're able to laugh at it. When the show is a drama, you're able to take it seriously. It's perfect. I could see why Vivian Medrano would want to do something like that with her shows. I can vaguely see the Bojack influence on both of these shows, as bizarre as it might be for me to say. However, and this is something that I'm sure all of y'all were waiting for me to say, the difference in quality between Bojack Horseman's writing and Has-Been Hotel / Helluva Boss's writing, the difference between how Bojack Horseman executes this versus how Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss executes this is f***ing night and day. In Bojack Horseman, they actually try with the comedy. The show is actually funny and well written. In Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss, the humor is just swearing and sex jokes, and that's it. Significantly more immature and juvenile when compared to Bojack's style of humor. It's like Vivian Medrano had no idea how to convey that these shows were not for kids and that they're for adults, and so she decides excessive swearing and sex jokes, that's the way to go. Even though there are tons of different ways to properly convey that something like Has-Been Hotel is not a kid's show, it's a show for adults. The show takes place in hell, for f***'s sake. The show has demons and sinners and whatever as the main characters. A key part of Has-Been Hotel's storyline is that the angels in heaven commit what is essentially to the demons in hell. Nobody is going to mistake this for a Nickelodeon show. You don't need to have excessive swearing and sex jokes to convey that the show is for adults and not for kids. If anything, I think this show is a lot more appealing to kids than it is to adults because of how immature and juvenile the style of humor is. I cannot think of any actual adult that would watch this and find it funny. Like, someone that watches King of the Hill could watch this and think, what the f*** is this supposed to be? This is supposed to be for adults? This is like some immature 7-year-old's cartoon. I have gone on before numerous times about the style of humor that Vivzy Pop's cartoons have, but I feel like it is especially insulting for Helluva Boss Season 2. I swear, this wasn't as bad of a problem in Season 1. The constant swearing and sex jokes weren't there as much in Season 1 when compared to in Season 2. And then comparatively, I think Season 2 of Helluva Boss has more dramatic, serious moments in it when compared to Season 1 for both Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss. And none of the serious moments I am able to take seriously because of the awful humor, because of the raunchy, juvenile style of humor that this show has. Think of any of those like 90s, 2000s stoner sex comedies that we used to get, you know? Think of movies like, imagine something like American Pie, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, Superbad, Pineapple Express, The Hangover, you know, imagine like any of those movies. Think of something like Dude, Where's My Car? Imagine if Dude, Where's My Car had super serious dramatic moments in it. They would stick out like a sore thumb, they would feel incredibly out of place, and they would be impossible to take seriously because of the style of humor that the movie has. That's what Helluva Boss is like. Helluva Boss wants to be a funny comedy where the characters say the F word a million times and they make a million PP jokes and whatever, but then it also wants to be a super serious, deep drama. And it doesn't work at all. It is awful. If you want your show to be a raunchy comedy full of excessive swearing and sex jokes, fine, that's one thing. If you want your show to be a super serious drama, fine, that's another thing as well. But you cannot have your show be both of these things at the same time. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how good you think you could pull it off. You just can't. Comedy dramas can work, but I don't think raunchy comedy dramas can work at all. I'm trying to imagine what if something like Beavis and Butthead had serious dramatic moments in it, and how incredibly out of place they would be. That's what Helluva Boss is like to me. Also, I would like to apologize for comparing Beavis and Butthead to Helluva Boss. I am so sorry for disrespecting a 90s classic like that. Honestly, I would probably hate this show a lot less if it was either a fully bad comedy or a fully bad or mediocre drama. The fact that it tries to be both at the same time is what makes me hate it this much. In terms of comedy, this is no different from most other bad adult cartoons, and I've sat through a lot of bad adult cartoons, so I can verify that easily. If it weren't for the super serious dramatic moments, I guarantee you more people would be putting this on the same level as something like Alan Gregory, except Alan Gregory kind of tries with the humor. The super serious dramatic moments that are in Helluva Boss are what prevent people from putting it alongside something like Velma or Big Mouth. And I guarantee you, people would be a lot less generous towards this show if it was a pure bad comedy with zero dramatic, serious moments. Most people can gaslight themselves into thinking this is better than your average adult cartoon slop just because of the serious moments. But I see through it, man. I see through it. I'm not gonna fall for it. Hell no. I know I've said this a million times, but I would have much rather had a show that extensively focused on the demon hitman storyline that the show is supposed to have. This could have been a fun action-adventure comedy going over how these demons try to assassinate people in the real world. The Ghost Screwers episode also acts as an explanation to how Blitzo met Millie, and while Millie is comforting Blitzo, we have all of these different flashbacks showing like the different missions and whatever that these demons go on, assassinating people, and it just makes me think even more about the show that we could have gotten. Why couldn't this have been the show? Why couldn't the show just stick to being a comedy? Why does it try to be a drama as well? Nobody gives a shit about the demon-bird relationship. It's boring and it's impossible to take seriously because of the show's immature style of humor. Why would you sacrifice a fun, creative premise for generic romantic bullshit? I don't get it. And then, as if that wasn't enough, there are songs in this show. Now, there were songs in season 1 as well, but not that many. I think there were only like 3 songs in season 1 and that's it. In season 2 though, every episode has a song. Every episode has a musical number. And it's like, I already don't care about the storyline for this show. I don't need musical numbers to make me care even less. Every time a song would come up, I would groan, open up a new tab, and do something else to distract myself from the song until it ended. What I said about Has-Been Hotel's songs, I guess could apply to these songs as well. They might not be objectively bad songs necessarily. They're not badly composed, they're not badly sung. I cannot be bothered to pay attention to the songwriting, so I cannot verify how good or how bad the songwriting is. But at the very least, I can tell y'all the singing isn't bad and the composition isn't bad either, so there's that, I guess. Now, something that I initially praised the Helluva Boss for when compared to Has-Been Hotel was the fact that it didn't feel bloated or cluttered when compared to Has-Been Hotel. One of the biggest problems that I had with Has-Been Hotel was how needlessly bloated and cluttered it was, especially for its first season. This was its first season, and we had like 20 different main characters all at once. We had too many different characters to focus on for one season, for the debut season no less. A lot of these characters would have been better off debuting in a later season, and some of these characters had no reason to be there. Like, thinking about it now in retrospect, what the hell does Nifty do in season 1? What is her purpose? What does she do in season 1? I'm sure maybe they'll give her a purpose. Maybe she'll actually be important to the storyline for season 2. But for season 1, she serves no purpose at all to the storyline besides being the funny, quirky, XD, lol random character straight out of 2012. Except this is a in 2024 cartoon. And then Helluva Boss in comparison I thought wasn't as bad in this aspect. This was back when I cluelessly thought the show was about demon hitmen and it wasn't a boring drama about the relationship between a bird and a demon. Obviously now I know better. Going into season 2 of Helluva Boss, the show now feels a lot more cluttered when compared to season 1. There are characters that barely appeared in season 1 that are more fleshed out in season 2, and there are characters that weren't in season 1 at all that are now introduced in season 2, which I will give credit for. I will give a little bit of praise for this. They don't include every single character into season 1. They only include a few of them into season 1, and then they'll introduce more in season 2. That's how it should go. And yet now I feel like it still feels bloated, even if they set up a few new characters in season 2, even if like a lot of these characters weren't in season 1. The first season didn't feel bloated or cluttered, and now season 2 feels bloated and cluttered, with way too many characters to care about.